Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
Want awesome health? How about doubling your energy? With our free Awesome Health course, you can get a new video and lesson every single day for 84 straight days. The course covers everything from optimizing your digestion, nutrient intake, correct health issues, including weight, skin, energy, immune system, and so much more. The course could easily be worth $200 or $300 for, and yet it's 100% free when you go to bioptimizer.com. That's bioptimizers.com. Once you're there, just enter your name and email to get the first 3 phases of the Bioptimization report. You'll get the report immediately and begin getting your video lessons each and every day from there on in.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And I'm so excited today to talk about this topic. We're going to talk about burnout, fertility. We might even touch clinical hypnotherapy, a topic that both my wife is into and our guest today. And, for ladies in particular in the modern world, there's been a lot of strides made, I think, in the opportunities that are presented to women today in regards to career development that may not have been available in the past. But that comes with trade-offs, and the trade-offs oftentimes are related to family, fertility, trying to compete on multiple levels, both as a wife, a mom, a career person, and then there's all the external elements of trying to maintain one's physicality and their age, and people are getting married, and then there's, educational requirements and all of those things that put a tremendous amount of pressure on the modern woman today. And our guest today is someone who has had to navigate all of those things at the very highest level and is going to share with some insights. So our guest is Charlene Gisele, who is a former big law litigator turned high performance coach and clinical hypnotherapist, a globally acclaimed keynote speaker and 2-time TEDx presenter. She is internationally booked by leading organizations for her practical and inspiring insights on sustainable high performance. Charlene is saying that peak performance is not about working less, but recovering smarter. And she joins us today. Where are you at today, Charlene?
Today, I'm in my Bordeaux home. So
there we go. So you're you're kind of a high flying digital nomad from what we garnered just prior to.
That's right.
Jumping on the podcast, you spend your time. So maybe you can give a little bit of background about how you got to this point. And of course, you're an expecting mom. Very soon you're going to be having a child, which is very exciting. And of course, adds a whole other wrinkle to everything that's going on. So maybe you can kind of guide your background of how you got to this point and how you went from a big law litigator to currently what you're doing now to deal with this whole high performance burnout situation that so many females in particular are subject to in today's world.
I would love to. And first off, wait, I might have to borrow your intro. It was so good.
Go ahead, you can have it.
So, my story is somewhat of a classic tale that has a lot of cautionary tale component to it. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I like to think of is the fact that the way that I got myself into the position that I'm in is mostly because I was not very well to start with. So, I like to think of myself as, I don't know if I love the word wellness influencer or wellness ambassador. That sounds very guru-esque to me. But the reality is I do live and breathe well-being day to day. And I like to think that I'm actually the healthiest I've ever been in my life. But it hasn't always been the case. When I was a lawyer, I didn't really consciously think about my health proactively. I took it for granted at best, and I actively destroyed it on most days. And I just didn't realize the net cost to that, because for me, the only thing that mattered was a career, power, status, recognition, intellectual accomplishment, making my daddy proud, and being the best lawyer that I could be, right? So I grew up in a rather conservative, conventional family whereby, the best way to get my dad's attention was to get the best grades in school. He was a very, very proud father and very ambitious and very professional and very successful. A very
Was he a lawyer
polished.
as well? Was he a lawyer as
So
well?
this is interesting. Everybody thinks that he was. He was in the finance and insurance broker world. So he was very much working with lawyers all day long. He was very much working like a lawyer. And so the story goes that when I was so little, I used to literally following him around his office. I loved it. I would just go and sit at his desk and play behind the piles and piles of paperwork. And my mom would buy me Barbie dolls and I couldn't care less. I just wanted to be with my father. And I remember being so tiny and saying, Daddy, Daddy, what do you do when you like paperwork so much? He said, well, of course, my darling, you become a lawyer. So for me,
That's such a great line. Of course, darling. You become a lawyer. So
it's literally what happened. And then oh gosh, the story is kind of really sweet, but I'll try to give you a compressed version. My dad was obsessed with Charles Darwin and his theories, and he would tell me stories that were not the classic bedtime stories. And then I wanted to find out where Charles Darwin studied, and I found out that he studied in Cambridge University at Christ College. And I thought, ooh, Christ College was also one of the top colleges in the world for law. I was like, tick, tick, tick. I could study where Charles Darwin studied, and I could have a degree from Cambridge University, and I could become the biggest lawyers that I could be, and I could be making my daddy super proud. So for me, it was a one straight line. From that point onward, I had one single focus in my life was to be a grade A student, was to be a good girl, and was to study as hard as I possibly could. And I took this to a bit of an obsessive level. So just to give you a flavor, Wade, I thought, well, maybe it's not good enough to be a French qualified lawyer. So on top of having French qualification and qualification from Cambridge University, I decided to double down and be both a UK and French qualified solicitor. So I was able to practice in France and in England. And then to top it up, because I thought, let's make it a bit harder yet, I thought, well, let me join one of the most powerful American law firm in the world. And let's choose to work in one of the most aggressive departments, litigation, oil and gas. So there you go.
What was the law firm? What was the law firm? You don't mind me asking?
I don't mind you asking for that. Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to say.
Is it okay if that's...
No problem. Okay. Because assassins might be sent to my house, so we'll stay away from that.
They're quite notorious in books and presses. So
okay.
Yes. And to be fair, I've actually maintained an amazing relationship with the law firms that I've worked out, because I believe that a lot of my burnout was, self-induced, because I didn't know better about how to keep myself well. So I worked. Can
you just for a moment?
Yeah.
Can you break down how much time that it takes to become, first off, get into one of these schools, then to move to the top of that, and then to move through these firms, and then to go through past your bar and go through all this sort of stuff, and then get into the first. Can you explain to me on a workload week just how many hours that entails? Because a lot of people here will watch the legal show, they'll watch Law and Order, they'll watch, whatever thing, and think it's all very glamorous and cool and in the courtroom or whatever. But they don't understand what it takes to get to that point. What was your workload like during that time?
Well, you're looking at somewhere between 65 to 85 hours a week. I think the most I've worked is maybe 90-hour week. And obviously that's clearly unsustainable. And then are divided between a Monday and a Friday. And they're certainly done, if you do the math, that's not 9 to 5 kind of days. So I'll tell you how that's done. You do a hell of a lot of all-nighters. So that's the word in the industry, where you just generally don't sleep. and you do weekend work, right? So particularly if you're working with multiple jurisdictions, it's actually quite normal to be up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., because let's say you're working with Australia and then you're working with LA and then you're working with New York. So you have East Coast and then you may be working with the UAE or then you're working with Paris. So you really follow a global time zone, which means that your hours are quite scattered and that you tend to pick up work at weekends. So, for
You bring
me,
up a point here. I want to clarify this because I was listening. I had learned about this from Dr. Jordan Peterson was doing an interview
yes.
because he was doing psychological counseling for many people at the highest levels of the performance industry and a lot of females. And he was confirming what you have just said. So he's giving an inference. You're telling me exactly what he was saying was true. And he says, you work up through these fields. You're a killer woman. You're top of your class. You make this stuff. You go this. They want you to become partner. You're sitting in a law firm in New York City, and you have got to take that call at 4 a.m. from your Japanese clients because if you don't take it, you're done and your career is over. They're moving on to someone else, and you lose that client. Is that the kind of pressure you're talking?
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of it,
and it's normal. It's
yes,
expected.
it is. I mean, you can see it from my reaction. I'm like, well, yes.
Yeah. It's so
right?
but this is. But I think the glamour of that world propagated. I think in the public arena that influences people to go into that field, both men and women and everything. It's very glamorous. There's so many television shows. There's so many great movies. The courtroom scenario, and everybody wants to be that one that just you like A Few Good Men or something like those type of movies, or or Perry Mason or Matlock. My mom used to watch all these shows, and Law and Order. And you can just go down the list. Historically, there's always been these elements that are very attractive and sexy and like compelling and drive people to be into this industry, and yet the actual process that it takes to be here is literally superhuman. This is like superhuman requirements. How did you survive this? Like, how did you you talked about these all-nighters, you talked about working weekends, you talked about all this. What was the impact on your regular life? Like, how was this impacting you?
Oh, well, it's quite simple. I mean, it's a one-track kind of life, in other words. So you sacrifice everything else. At least I did. But I really want to emphasize the fact that I had no notion of what was normal because I was surrounded by people who worked just as hard. So it was just done to me or me only, or I was not an isolated case, right? Arguably, the partners that I worked with worked even harder than I did, right? So I just really want to say, like, it's not like, ooh, me, poor little me, like what happened to me? Nothing like that. It's industry norm, right? So
correct. And I think that's important to
dangerous.
Communicate to people. That's what people don't recognize is like there is a culture of this in the high performance world that a lot of people don't realize. Like they say, well, why do professional athletes make so much money? Well, because that's all they do. They dedicate their life from morning to night to their sport. Why do people want to be a top end lawyer at a big firm in some places? It's the same thing. It's like if you want to be at the top surgeon, I've interviewed a lot of surgeons and stuff, and the time and effort and energy, but there's a culture that supports all of that. So it becomes normalized that it's not special. You're actually more like, oh, I'm not putting up as much as Bob or Mary. They're outperforming, and I got to go even further. Did you feel that kind of psychic pressure on you while you were in those worlds?
Oh, totally. And not from the firm directly, from peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
Because I was fiercely competitive. Competitive to the bone.
Yeah,
Why did I want to be a litigator in the first place? Because I love to win. I get a kick. So if I like to win a case, you better bet I like to win the next promotion, and I like to be the first one to be promoted, and I like to be the highest biller, and I like to be the one that has the most utilization, and I like to, of course, right? So it's a mindset. So therefore, you follow strategies that are extremely unhealthy. So for me, the operation was quite simple. I kind of applied very basic mathematics. I want to do more billing. I only have 24 hours in a day. I'm just going to stop sleeping, right? Like it's quite simple, really. So what it is.
I love it.
So a few years down the line, here I was diagnosed with clinical insomnia. And genuinely, wait, I remember leaving the doctor's practice, and the doctor was more distraught than I was at the diagnosis. I was like, man, you don't understand. Like, this is the best news ever. Like, clinical insomnia, more billing, all-nighters, easy peasy.
I love it.
At this point,
I come from the bodybuilding world, and I can remember it's a very extreme 24/7 sport. Especially, in the unregulated drug world. And there would be guys that be like, okay, I'm peeing blood. I know the drug's working. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like people don't really understand what it takes to, be a UFC cage fighter or a professional football player and in this realm, you guys are essentially what I would call the intellectual professional athletes. Like you are dealing with a cognitive load that is far beyond what most people can comprehend to just think about this, folks. Like just go look at your credit card statement and look at the small print. Go look at your billing and these contracts that you just click on your when you sign up for your Google ad, it's a quick, or like there's all of this legal speak in there, but as a professional in that industry, and these are just minor things relative, like we're not talking about mega deals and, all this stuff. Like the level of detail and comprehension and vectors that you've got to practice and deal with is very intense. And then you're doing this without any sleep. And then you're excited because now I have clinical insomnia, because that means I've qualified to just continue down this route, right? Would that be kind of the internal representative? Like, yes, I don't need sleep, I don't need food, I don't need love. I'm gonna win. It's kind of like that.
Totally. I genuinely perceived my insomnia as a competitive advantage.
Yes, I have friends who are living that life right now. Right. And I see them, once every year or two, and we check in and I go, hey, how's it going or whatever. And they can't stop because there is an addictive aspect to that, being on that edge, would you say?
Huge. And that's where self-responsibility kicks in. You can blame the industry, you can blame the peers, you can blame the firm, but I don't buy into that. I think at the end of the day, I still have, but now it's well managed, a very addictive personality. I'm well aware of it. I can say it out loud because I've done years and years and years of therapy and psychoanalysis. So
have you done a neurochemical test?
No, not neurochemical.
Brain? Yeah. So what's interesting, because we're into neurochemistry, and I know we're jumping all around here, but I'm fascinated.
That's good. I love that.
I get really fascinated by this high performance world. And there was a famous coach in the United States by Dr. Morrow, or not De Pasquale, but there was a famous coach, and he would do neurochemical tests on his athlete, Charles Poliquins. He coached, I think, gold medalists in 27 different sports. And if your neurotransmitters weren't dopamine or acetylcholine as the dominant neurochemicals, he wouldn't coach you. Because he said, there's no chance that you're going to be a world champion. And the addictive personality types tend to be highly dopamine dominant in that they are constantly searching. What's interesting is a lot of people will see dopamine as the molecule of accomplishment, but it's actually the molecule of anticipation. So it's when I get to the next spot, and the second that you get it, there's a drop in the feeling. And then you, in order to not spiral into a depressive state, you've got to set the next crazy goal to go for, so that you can again fire up that dopamine loop again in anticipation of what's going to happen when you get this next level and this next level. And this is what leads the Olympic athletes set. A large percentage of them crash psychologically after major competitions. The same thing with professional athletes. There's a high rate of addiction in the professional fields, both in the medical field and in the legal field and in the finance field, because when they can't get enough, they're searching for those dopamine hits. It's either sex or it's drug usage or some other aspect to get that dopamine high. So it's almost like people that are wired for high performance are also wired for significant problems because of the nature of their neurochemistry.
Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%. You train, it's a form of toxic endurance. That's the way I describe it.
That's a great term. I want to write that down.
Yeah, go for it.
Toxic endurance.
Well, and that's something that I think is under talked about. And it's interesting to me because I get asked all the time to talk about mental endurance, mental fortitude, and resilience. And the reality of it, coming from the world now of clinical hypnotherapy, where I'm really fascinated about the addicted mind and the implication, and particularly the addicted to work mind, so the workaholic archetype. I find that when it comes to resiliency, there is such a thing as toxic resiliency or toxic endurance, whereby, one should not be proud that they're working 90 hours a week. That is not something to be proud of, because it means that something else has been sacrificed. There is no human being in this world who can actually work that much without sacrificing or compromising their immunity, their metabolic health, their movement, their fitness, their sleep, their relationship, their love language, whatever that may be. I mean, here's the truth, right? I was working like that, but my back was wrecked. My sleep was wrecked. My marriage was wrecked. I had developed quite a toxic relationship in my own marriage. I didn't see my ex-husband. I didn't see my ex-stepson. I didn't see my friends. I stopped pursuing my passions. I stopped hanging out with my family as much as I used to. I stopped returning calls from my mother. I became less of a best friend to my best friends, right? So there is only one of me. And if that one of me has a primary relationship to work, then that's my primary relationship.
And what was the justification you're using maybe when your friends or family, colleagues, partner, or whatever is like, hey, hey, Charlene, like our relationship's going down the toilet, or we don't see you anymore at dinner, or where have you been for my birthday or Christmas, or these what was the rationale that you're using inside of that to deal with it? Like how are you defending yourself in those positions, or is it just complete avoidance over time?
I don't have an avoidance style personality, so I don't tend to avoid, but being an addict or a former recovered addict, my substance of choice being work, I did have what addicts would qualify as clear traits, such as bending the truth, covering up your tracks. So, like an alcoholic will hide the wine bottle, I would hide the fact that I'm working from my loved ones. So,
wow. How would you do that?
Well, I do that because a little bit like someone who doesn't want to booze in front of their loved ones because the loved one knows booze is not good for them. For example, my ex-husband got really pissed off when he knew I was billing and billing and billing. So it's not like it was the days and age of working from home. That wasn't a thing yet, but I would always, not that it was a term, working from home. I'm talking back in the BlackBerry days, right? I know that reveals my generation, but I would like be on my BlackBerries sort of in the toilet or in the bathroom, and you'll be like, "Oh, you're working." I'd be like, no, I'm shopping. I'm buying myself a dress for the cocktail next week. So, this sort of non-admittance of the reality, because you're living in a sort of parallel universe where you need to hide the substance. So I would lock myself in bathrooms or go to longer loose break just to be doing more work away from quote unquote disturbances, which would be my loved ones, right? And so then it becomes a vicious circle, because what happens is you have broken relationship and more dysfunctional relationship. So what do you do to seek comfort? You do the thing that you're good at. Like all good addicts, you get more of what you love, which is not love, of course. It's dependency, but you're not aware of that. And now I'm a failed wife. I'm a failed whatever, fill the gap. Like I'm a failed best friend. I'm a failed community member. But man, I'm a very, very, very good lawyer. And the more I fail in my marriage, guess what? The better I become as a lawyer because I build harder and harder and harder. So it's a vicious cycle because now what I need to do to get away from my quote unquote failing marriage is get more work so I get more fixed to make me feel better about that one thing in life I'm actually good at.
I can share a personal story. In 1998, I was preparing for the national championships, and I was working 3 jobs and training 4.5 hours a day. And there was a position, I was a few weeks out from the show, and I had gone through all this stuff, and I hadn't slept for 2 or 3 days. And I remember coming into the gym, and I'm training just at a psychotic level. Like at those days, I would train till you were in excruciating pain and falling down on the floor and whatever. And you'd just be totally wrecked. And I remember standing in the gym at this point. It was about 10:30 at night. Or not quite 10:30 because I had to go to work that night. And I remember sitting there. I don't need sleep. I don't need food. I don't need love. I'm indestructible. And I looked like I was indestructible. I'm this huge, muscular, ripped guy that's at the height of his game, that's working and training and dieting. And there's a place that you can get into, and you talk about this toxic endurance where it is a super state, and it's very, very addictive when you're in it. I think it's hard for people to understand the juice, and what you're describing to me I can relate to on that level. And when I came out of that show that year, and I almost died after the contest from dehydration at that, and felt like knives going into my kidneys. And I remember going, and I was just like, afterwards I was like, okay, this might kill me. This could kill me. I was very clear that I had ridden the line, and I still wasn't good enough, right? I still was not at the standard I needed to be, despite all my best efforts. And I was like, okay, and I made a choice. I'm either going to continue down this road and die, or win or die trying, or I need to shift gears a little bit and rethink what I'm doing. And I chose the other path, but that was a whole other journey that, just the decision wasn't enough, because then that behavior got replaced by other suboptimal behaviors and other situations. So I'm curious, you're in the throes of this addictive workaholicism, your marriage is falling apart, your friendships are falling out, your relationship, it's all like, where are you at? And what was the point where you was like, wait a minute, I got to change?
Oh, I wish there was this point. Instead, it just smacked me in the face like it usually does.
What happened?
It was Monday morning, and I was not very well myself, but of course in complete denial. I was deep in a major litigation, so working my butt off as I always did. And my mother called at work because, of course, I don't answer my phone at that point. I think we got that picture right.
Right. By this time, you had closed off most of the relationships in your life. Is that right?
Right. And at this point, I am. Yeah. At
Okay.
this point, I am. But marriage hanging by a thread, and a few months later, I was divorced. So very much hanging by a thread. So my mother calls insistently in the office, and so I pick up because she never ever called. It was genuinely the first time my PA told me that it was my mother on the line. So, of course they had that number, but for emergency. And she said, sweetie, daddy had a heart attack on his way to work. And of course my heart sank. my dad at the time was, honestly just one of my favorite person in the whole wide world. And my hero, my inspiration, the reason why I work the way I do. Everybody thinks he's a lawyer because of that story, but the person who really sort of put the seed of that dream inside my head. And I genuinely thinking, well, obviously I was under shock. And I thought, well, he got admitted into intensive care to have surgery. And I did a bit of a sort of risk reward analysis about leaving work or flying home. And I know that's going to sound awfully practical and rational and perhaps weirdly enough, not emotive as a reaction. But I made the decision to stay at work and continue focusing on the litigation because I thought that's what my daddy would want.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I had no way of communicating with him because he was, fighting for his life. But that's what I said to my mother. And I think that was quite a cold reaction. There is no belittling how distraught I was. Like, it was the saddest news I had ever received in my life up until that point. But there was a sort of coldness in my reaction that I think is a reflection of where my psychological state was at, where I felt like I had a sense of duty and a sense of mission. And it was very much of a mission accomplished or not accomplished, a case of failing if I dropped out of my litigation. And just a very misplaced sense of duty, of the fact that I belonged there at the firm billing, despite what was happening at home. So I kept on billing, I kept on working, I kept on litigating that week. Of course, my father was on my mind every single minute, and I just was dreading the fact that I wouldn't have closure, that I wouldn't say goodbye. And then on the Friday, my mother called again. It was around 4 p.m. And of course, I was in the office. Quite easy to predict. And she said, sweetie, I'm calling back because we don't think he's going to make the night. And you might want to consider getting the last flight home. And she needed to say no more. At this point, I knew in my heart that I had to go. So I rushed out of the firm, just literally bought the last ticket while I was in the back of the taxi, jumped on the plane, rushed to the intensive care unit where he'd been admitted. And as I walked through the door, I saw my father stare at me, sort of kind of looking at me, and he had a stroke just in this moment, just in front of my eyes.
Jeez.
And, for somebody so accomplished, so brilliant, so sophisticated, so smart, so good with his words, to literally see his face melt. Like, for anyone who's witnessed a stroke, and I hope if you're listening to this, you haven't, because it's a very traumatic sight. I literally saw his face glide. It's hard to explain, but the eye becomes out of shape, the facial structure, the jaw, the nose.
Yeah.
It's just,
yeah.
Don't want to be too graphic in case somebody's listening at breakfast. But I was totally stunned. I was there witnessing that. I was screaming. I was just calling for help. And then next thing I know, there is all the nurses and doctors rushing over my father. And at this point, I realized where I was at. I had this moment where, of course, all my love was directed to my father, but I thought, this is me. Like, this is the mirror of my future. This is what I'm doing. And there was this moment where I genuinely thought that was it. My dad was passing, and that was the moment of death. And then what was it all worth it? He was successful. He made so much money. He was always a provider. He was father of the year, husband of the year, so accomplished, so successful, so brilliant, so much security. And so what? Like, what? We're gonna, go to his funeral? Like, what good is success if you're not gonna survive that success with the people you love and you built it for? And it really made me think a lot about this notion that, my father, his whole life self-described as a provider, right? I have well, we're four in total. So I have three siblings. I'm the little one. I'm number four. And I grew up in quite a conservative setup where, mom is a stay-at-home mom and dad is a provider. And that was always the norm in my household. And, all my life, I saw my dad disappear and go to work because he was providing for us. And in my mind, that never pictured him as absent dad. It pictured him as a hero. That's just a position that I chose to adopt, right? And not all of my siblings feel that way, by the way. So that's interesting. But for me, he was a hero.
Yeah. We don't, the events of our life are not ubiquitous in how we interpret the events.
That's right.
That's a really important aspect for people to understand is like, no one's really clear what reality is. It's our interpretation or projection into reality that determines what it is. And that is subjective and can be altered, but these frameworks tend to shape who we become or the rationales behind why people are the way they are. I always say that, everybody's wearing a mask. Everyone pretends they're not wearing a mask. And the reason they're wearing a mask is because some aspect that wanted to get served as a little child.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get back to this. So what happened?
So what happened is that I just had this profound moment of realization, and then we had to wait for the surgery and for the result of the surgery, and he did survive. And he's actually with us today. And for me, that was the moment in time, though, where I thought, well, Daddy, you're the reason that I became a lawyer, and you're going to be the reason I quit. So, and what's funny, Wade, is that he's proud of both sides of the equation.
The gift of the tragedy.
It is. And this story is not about my father. The reality, Wade, is that, he's one of the lucky ones. And I say that because although there were some long-term consequences and rehab was really difficult, but very successful, I know so many high performers who have lost their life to work, right?
Sure.
Many.
It's actually pretty much standard.
Indeed.
People die working. They literally drop dead working.
Oh, yes. And I've known about over a dozen now in this exact scenario. And just the other week, I was catching up with some dear friends from my previous law firm and found out about two colleagues who passed before their 60th birthday of stress-related. And it's not typical to that firm specifically. It's just industry. And it's not even just typical just to the legal world. You can see it in hedge funds. You can see it in brokerage, like my father, or investments or insurance, all high-flying white-collar professionals, right? Who are subject to burnout. So to me, that was a moment in life where I thought, I've lost enough, right? Like at that point, I was losing a marriage. I nearly lost my father. And I thought, most likely next thing in line is my own life, right? And I suddenly had a sense of responsibility to myself, but also I wanted to be really involved in my father's recovery. And I had to become credible, because if I was the one who was still having all those maladaptive coping mechanisms, then that relationship that we had together could not have been rebuilt on healthy basis and foundation. In other words, he was the tree, I was the apple. And so there was an element of, if he was going to recover and rehab, we had to do this together, and we had to unlearn the programming of work the hardest and burn the candles at both ends. And we had to relearn together how one can work sustainably and still call themselves a high performer and a high achiever. So am I still very ambitious? Yes, 100%. Do I still work really hard? Yes, most likely harder than the average person, but that still feels like part-time to me because compared to Big Low, it is.
Yeah. It's like I go to the gym all the time, and I'm laughing at myself because I'm a fraction of my former self, and people are like, "Oh, well, you're killing it." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like,
Right, like, yeah.
I feel like
exactly.
I feel like I'm just descending into mediocrity, and it's great. It's great.
Who was it? I had a podcast, or like right now it's 11:30 for me p.m. because of the time difference, and so I had a podcast, I think it was 2 days ago. So I rotate. So I have my North America days for my podcast. And so I'm very strategic because I now prioritize my sleep very fiercely because I want to stay well, unlike before. And I was talking to one of the podcast guests who said, "Oh my goodness, it's 11, so late." And the person was being so polite and so kind and so considerate. I said, to me, it takes me a moment to register it. It's 11 p.m. It's okay. it's fine, In the grand scheme of things, I used to think that was an early night. So I'm quite happy to do a recording at 11 p.m. So I'm grateful for that side of Big Low because it's expanded my horizon and definitely made me healthily resistant and resilient in a way that I can now apply for the better good, which is my health and my clients' health.
How many
so
years ago
I did
was
a bit
this?
of.
How much years ago did all this transpire?
Pardon?
How many years ago did this all transpire?
So I've been running this business now for coming up to 8 years, and it took me a couple of years to recover and find
so
my
we'll get
feet
into
again.
that. So about 8 years ago, we're looking at, is this when this happened?
So my burnout was about a decade ago.
So about 10 years. And then what was, okay, so you go through this, you've made this decision, and now you're got to go through the recovery process, but you're like coming off of work and facilitating this, like that's like coming off a drug, essentially. You're coming off on a very addictive drug. What was that like?
So I actually decided to, because at this point I was already quite interested in psychology, certainly was not an expert considering how I mistreated my own life, but I had a bit of an interest and I could see the blind spot. Nope. Okay, that sounds like an oxymoron. See the blind spot. Obviously, I couldn't see the blind spot, but I was aware of the fact that I had a hell of a lot of blind spots in my life. Mm-hmm. And I was aware of the fact that I wasn't very well physically, emotionally, or psychologically. It didn't take someone with a PhD in psychology to know that I wasn't very well. So I decided to be quite radical. And I think this is the part of the story that I would say don't replicate. So for anyone listening, I'm not advocating you do that. There are a lot of things that I advocate, but this is not one of them. I did what all good addicts do, make a very brutal decision that is slightly 360, a little bit radical, and go from one extreme to another. And that's also classic personality traits where you don't see the nuances.
We're going cold turkey. I'm stopping the booze, I'm starting a drug, and I'm going to start training for a marathon now.
There you go.
Yeah,
classic, right?
Yeah,
you got
right.
it.
Yeah,
so
right.
I decided to go and quit and lock myself into an Indian ashram for 3 months to meditate.
Wow. I can relate to that. I spent a little time in an ashram when I came out of my whole thing too. So that's good old India.
So there you go.
Good old India in an ashram, right? There you get a lot of those.
And look, wait, do I regret it? Like not one bit.
Where did you go?
I learn? Pardon?
Where did you go? Where's
this is an ashram called Govardhan.
And where is that?
North of Mumbai.
Wow.
I highly recommend it. I'm happy to put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Did you have a particular guidance person, and how did you find it? What was the, like, how did you come to the conclusion, you know what, I'm going to leave these law firms, I'm going into an ashram and devote my life to the mysticism of the Far East because they've got it all figured out?
It was never to become a devotee forever. So I was very aware of the fact this was a short shelf life solution. So I didn't go with a one-way ticket. I didn't go and that's it, I'm going to go and become a guru and live in India for the rest of my life. Not at all. I had a lot of girlfriends that were part of the yogic community. One of them in particular was running a very successful yoga school out of Australia, and she had incredible contact. And as part of her school, she knew this ashram where she was running breathwork and meditation programs that were really safe and really accredited by her school. So that's how I learned about it. And, I applied a very analytical mind, still being a litigator. So I didn't rush into the decision, but I think it was quite a brutal shift. The way I like to think about it, I didn't know that it was going to play this role in my life, but it played the role of rehab. So it was my version of 12 steps or putting myself through AA, because one of the beauty about the ashram, as hard as it was, is that obviously I was not a lawyer anymore. I didn't have access to a BlackBerry. So it is the equivalent of not accessing drugs or alcohol.
You're detoxing
it's a detox. It's rehab.
From the drug of choice, which was workaholism.
Indeed. So for me, although yes, I was with my gurus and it was an ashram and I was meditating, it was rehab. It was rehab. That's really what it was. But I do think that with hindsight, perhaps I did it very quickly, very abruptly. And so when I say don't do what I say, it turned out good. But perhaps, just baby stepping your exit strategy is smarter. I like radical changes.
Maybe in your case, maybe the only option was a radical intervention.
Perhaps, yes.
You could have no other option.
Because I was radically addicted, so
Yeah, you're radically addicted, so maybe that was the actual de facto choice. It might not be for everyone else. That's in the
that's right. So,
but for you, that was the salve that worked. Maybe there's other methodologies, but that might, I get it.
I always say it worked for me. That doesn't mean I would recommend that you do that. So I'm very conscious, when people are like, sounds great, where did you go? Which is the ashram? I'll send you the link, but I'm not saying you should go. Not because it's not a fantastic place. It's terrific, but it's tough, It's not all glamour. It's nothing like that. I think
Julia
people
Roberts
over
wasn't in
glamorize.
the lobby.
No. There was instead a rather large snake under my bed. I'm not even kidding. And when I say bed, I would mean more like a wooden.
Yes.
It was.
It's just a wooden box
as
that
it
you
should
sleep
be.
on over there. Yeah.
It was
Was it a cobra under your bed or anything like that?
I don't know. I didn't want to know. I just knew that it was
They had a snake
and that
under
was
your bed, though.
No, like genuinely, I'm not making this up.
No,
it's
I
not
know.
like
I get it. I understand kind of some of the unusual practice. Was this part of the practice of the ashram?
Oh, not at all.
Or just
No.
snakes happen to be there sometimes.
Oh yes. No, they were the kindest, most caring, most benevolent people in the world, and that's not the kind of tricks they would play. Not at all. Just that's what happens.
Okay. So you do the 3 months. So how long were you with your dad, and then how long were you in this ashram for recovery?
So I was with my dad for a few months when I helped him with his physical recovery, and then I went to India, and then I went to Bali.
Okay.
And
my favorite place in the world. What took you to Bali after the ashram experience?
Yoga.
Oh, so what part of Bali were you in? Ubud?
No, I was in Nusa Lembongan actually.
Okay, Nusa Lembongan. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and it was a wonderful experience. I went there to carry on with my yoga. At this point, I wanted to do my 500 hours YTT.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
the classic.
You gotta be a yoga star now, right?
That's right. Like, what do you do when you don't want to be a lawyer anymore?
You go to Bali, and you go to I always say, I used to hang out at a place in Ubud called the Yoga Barn.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes.
And you sit there and have dinner with, it had a lovely cafe, and of course, there would be an endless stream of high-performing cast-offs that had just said, "Yeah, I'm done with all that. I'm here for my teacher training," or there was the other part that had kind of went into the yogic world and wanted to become the greatest yogi ever. You know, they were full on. So it was a fascinating cast of characters that would come through in those places. I spent many years, and I would spend about 4 months a year for many years in Ubud, in Bali in particular. And, you know, you just see the whole character of people, why they end up into the yoga world. It's fascinating. Digital nomads and yogis, that made up.
And Bitcoin bros too.
Well, the Bitcoin was just getting started.
Yes.
Wrote a book about that whole thing at one point because I thought it was fascinating. We didn't know what was going to go on with it. Bitcoin was trading at around a couple $100 back then. So that's how long ago that was. Yeah.
And you know, that trip changed my life for many reasons, including meeting my now husband.
How did you meet?
Oh, on the beach. It was a scene out of a movie.
That sounds extremely romantic.
It was. And
so you're down there, yogi girl, taking your 500-hour teacher training course kind of thing.
Recovering, right? And most definitely
Recovering
thinking about men.
Right. And then up out of the ocean strides this Adonis surfer. What was the story? How did it go?
Pretty much something like that. Yes, he was actually not out of surfing. He was out of yoga. He just took a class where I was studying. And not my class, I want to say. I've never been with a student, never will be. I just want to clarify. So he was not part of my class. He just taken a class and I was walking to the next one. And it was sunset in this exact moment. And there was the most glorious sunset. And I saw him. And honestly, I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but, you know, it's been 8 years now, so I feel like I can safely say that. I just saw his eyes and I couldn't see anything else. I couldn't think of anything else. It was like I'd been starstruck.
This is really like totally eat, pray, love kind of stuff, right?
I know.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I'd be so conscious about telling that story if, you know, we'd met and it'd only been 3 weeks. But I feel like after, you know, a pregnancy and a marriage and 8 years of a solid relationship, I can tell the story and say it was pretty grounded. But it was one of those feelings that, you know, happens once in a lifetime. And I saw him and I just felt something so unique, so beautiful, so extraordinary, kind of literally stopped me in my track. But now coming back to the practical aspect, I had to attend that class because I was a goody student and a goody teacher. And he was with his mate as well. And he was not at all paying attention to me. He was just watching the sunset. So I saw him, but he didn't see me.
Wow.
And I realized that rather rapidly. And I thought, well, I most likely have 2 seconds to find a way to draw his attention to me, or I continue to walk and I'll never see him again. And to me, that was not an option. So I thought, okay, split-second decision here. There is a sunset. It's a pretty good spot. It would be quite legitimate for me to stop, look at the sunset, and then maybe just, you know, flick my hair, look behind me, and see what's up. So there I am, just stop walking, watch the sunset, play with my hair, wait for the moment where he's gonna catch my eye, and that moment doesn't arrive because, and now I know this, he is in this meditative state, he just had yoga, he's looking at the sunset and he doesn't have a care in the world because that's the kind of man he is. He's very meditative, very contemplative, very introspective. And he was not looking for a flirt. So he was just in his world, mesmerized by the sunset. But his mate saw the whole thing unfold and goes, mate,
hey, bro,
just do something.
Snap out of the Zen zone, buddy.
There is a girl that's
down here at 12 o'clock. You know, you're like
shaking you out. She stopped walking.
It's a good bro.
Gotta do something. And Simon's like, what? his friend, bless him, love his friend, said, yeah, she's really checking you out. And
Gentlemen, this is why you need to have a good wingman at all times. You never know when you are missing key signs. So this is a little shout out for all the boys out there. Like,
totally, Wade. Honestly, if it wasn't for his friend, I'm not too sure, because I wasn't gonna wait forever.
Sure.
There was my moment of mermaid hair in the wait. Had a
on
short
the beach
shelf
in
life.
Bali during sunset, tossing her hair in the wind. He's like, I'm meditating.
And so he did decide to look, and then our eyes did meet, and he smiled back. And for me, that was enough of a cue. I was certainly not a shy girl. Never was, never will be.
So your aggressive litigation background came full force. Is like, okay,
I
got him right here, and here it
oh,
comes.
you bet. But at that
So
point,
maybe, isn't that the gift of all of that stuff? Is like, if you hadn't have done all that stuff, you might not have had the courage to make that move.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Although I have to say, wait, I have to give the man credit when credit is due. At that point, I did not need to encourage him any further. He was pretty determined to come over and to start a conversation.
Cool.
The moment he caught my eyes, then he was on the move.
That's great.
And then, yes, the rest is history. We fell in love, and it was deeply romantic, but it was also, a lot of geographical separation, because I was on a journey, and that was involving many, many trips. After that, I was off to Nepal. And for me, it was an absolute certainty that I was not going to change anything. And then I was off to Sri Lanka, and then I was off to the States to pursue my studies. I was doing primal health coaching, and then I was going to study clinical hypnotherapy for over a year. So, and I hope that doesn't come across as, again, too cold or too practical, but although I had fallen deeply, deeply in love, and he knows this side of the story, it wasn't going to stop me in my focus and my tracks about, building a business and healing. And also, I was very aware of the fact that I wasn't fully healed at that point. Not that we ever are fully healed, but I was definitely not in a place where...
You were still in recovery. You're still in recovery.
That's right. That's right. So I was very honest with him. I was very candid about my journey. And so we fell in love quickly, but we took it very slow in terms of building the foundation of a relationship, ensuring it wasn't a rebound, and making sure that it was, sustainable, and that we had beautiful foundations. And our relationship is based on health and communication and benevolence and trust, and it's wonderful, because it's one of the most, it is the most grown-up relationship I've ever been in. And I think, obviously I'm biased, but he's a terrific communicator, and he's such a kind person, so patient. And I'm not patient, so it's wonderful to be with someone like that. And over the years, he's become a great teacher of mine as well, because I see him not react to things. He's also ex-military, so not reacting is a gift in the military that can save your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I've learned a lot from that, and at the same time, he loves my fiery nature, and
sure.
I provide a lot of entertainment. That's for sure.
Sure, right?
So
I think, but the reason I'm diving into that, I think, because I do know particularly a lot of women who are on the high performance side. Many of them are attracted to this industry. In fact, they're killing it in their lives. They're killing it in their careers. They're, fit and doing all the biohacking stuff, and they're getting older, and they're wondering if they're going to find their partner, or if they're going to have a child. They've been crushing it in school, crushing it in their career, crushing it with their physiques, crushing it in all these areas, and that they're like, where's my Romeo? So I think, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, you found it in this journey, which is incredible, and I think that is inspiring in itself for the ladies that are listening to this podcast right now, that might be saying, where have all the good men gone? I don't know if I'll ever find it. Maybe I've made these choices early in my career, and I'm not going to find it. All that sort of stuff, right? So I really appreciate you kind of uncorking that. It's a fantastic story. It's a very romantic story. It's got, a lot of stuff in it, tragedy and performance and recovery and yoga and Bali and beaches. And, come on, this is right out of the movies. And it can be, for our listeners that are listening to this point, I want you to envision that can happen for you too. It can happen for you too.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar, live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
But let's go to the next part and that is your kind of career now. Like this relationship has unfolded and you've become someone who's helping a lot of people and overcome burnout and stuff. So where did that transition happen? How did you become the person that you are today? And why is this messaging or your methodology? How do you go about sharing that and why that is, how it is, who's it for, all of that sort of stuff? And what are those tenets? Because there's so many questions I got. I know I've just unloaded a lot after, we just did Eat, Pray, Love, or where are we in that journey now?
So I run a burnout advisory consultancy and I became a professional burnout advisor. And I know that's quite a unique niche. And that the reason I do that is because I know it takes being one to know one. So, a lot of the folks that I work with actually don't really know that they're burnt out, right? So I get a lot of professionals that come to see me because they were misdiagnosed. Either ladies that were diagnosed as having depressions, or sometimes the big elephant in the room, which could be perimenopause or menopause, is completely missed out. And we know there is a correlation between increased risk of burnout and those transition points from a hormonal standpoint. But there is also a tendency to over-medicate with depression diagnosis when in fact that can mask the reality of burnout, and medication is not always the best route. And working with someone who is a burnout advisor and a specialist who understands the intricacies of burnout, who can smell, feel, and see burnout from miles away.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody talks to me and they mention a few symptoms, like I'm a burnout detector. And that's what I do best.
Yeah. The high performance type, particularly, is that your key element?
100%.
You can kind of smell that one out because the high performer is very sophisticated in their defense mechanisms.
Oh, 100%. And I know that because I had all of them. And most of the time, not just sophisticated, we're talking very, very intelligent. So very good at fooling themselves, right? So we're not lying. We're really denying the reality. Mm-hmm. And sometimes actually we start to believe the reality that we live in, right? So it's that parallel universe, right? Where
that's I've got a couple friends who I would say are right in that spot, and I'm going to send them this podcast, by the way. I've attempted to do interventions with little success, and I watch the vacillating, like they know they need to make a change, they want to make a change, they want to enter into a loving relationship, they want to have children. And the unique aspect, particularly with females, is you do have to mature through this faster than, say, males. because of the biological reality about childbearing.
sure.
This is the unfair element that of human biology. Like I was sharing this with someone recently, and I just had my son 16 months ago, and I'll be 54 in May, so I had him a year and a half. So 52, I had my first child. And I share with my high-performing female friends, I said, if I was a woman, I would have missed the window. Like, the only reason I have a child right now is because I'm a man and wasn't born a woman. If I had followed this, let's say you take the same psychology, the same career path, the same drive, the same, like all of those things in a line, I missed the boat. But because I'm a guy, I was able to have a child later in life. That's not an option for many of my female friends. And I think it's tragic because I haven't found anything that's provided me more joy, satisfaction, happiness than my son. And I've enjoyed a wealth of happiness and joy and success in life, and I'm more than maybe I deserve or more than most. And I'm hyper grateful for all of those elements. And then I'm also hyper aware of like, oh, there's so many great ladies that are going to miss the boat. I saw the statistics that half of the women right now in their 30s who want to have children and have a relationship are not going to find a partner in time.
Oh, sure. I know that because this is...
Yeah, and it's the killers. It's the killers are the most likely to fail. Like the smarter they are. What's the three things? The more money that you make, the taller you are, and the more intelligent you are, actually reduces the options for females. It's the inversion for men, and it's the exclusion for females, just with the laws of hypergamy, if you look at all the sociological and psychological literature. So it's like the ones that probably need, like the world needs to have that, that put into the next generation, they're the ones that are getting disqualified out of the situation because of their own competency, essentially.
Well, of course. I mean, if you think about it, when you are this high caliber woman and you are very good at your craft and you've made so many sacrifices, and I speak as myself, but also on behalf of all the ladies that I coach day in and day out for that one specific reason. When the option comes and when the choice is there between the pregnancy or the promotion, you'll choose the promotion.
Yeah.
You'll choose the promotion and you will continue to pursue that path up until the time where, I mean, of course you're bright, of course you're intelligent, you're starting to play with fire, but you have a lot of money because you're fiercely independent financially and because you're a very sophisticated, polished professional who is an industry leader. So you're going to do things like maybe freezing your eggs and that's very smart and that's very good. But it doesn't completely buy back time. It buys back a hell of a lot of time. Wonderful. And I'm very pro of those things. And if you're listening and you're on the fence, there are so many different resources that I would love to send you about why there is huge benefit. But what I say, though, to some of my clients is there is a danger to that, right? So I'm very pro being proactive about freezing your eggs or freezing embryos if you're with a pair-bonded partner. But you have to be a little bit mindful that what you're doing in this moment is reinforcing the belief that you've got more time. And you do that and some more, and then pay for another most expensive clinic and do another embryo retrieval or egg retrieval to do another embryo. And then you bank all those things and you have more and more insurance policies, and that's great. And then what? Right? So I had a client who had very successful retrievals, and unfortunately, implementation didn't take. And, she was 43 going 44 at this point. She spent all the money in the world and she's now exhausted 5 rounds, which is about the limit. Like some clinic will have you have 6. It's quite rare. She's about to turn 44, so one of the clinic has already disqualified her. There's one more clinic that'll have her until her 45th birthday. But the reality is, despite all the money that she spent and all the very smart investment that she made, she's now working with me on how to accept the idea that she's most likely going to be a family of two.
Heavy.
Very.
Especially for someone who's used to accomplishing all their goals.
Well, indeed, because then it becomes quite obsessive, and rightly so, because it's that one thing, and it's pregnancy and pregnancy losses and IVF and fertility is one of these things in life where the input doesn't measure out to the output. Yeah. So as leading women, we're used to put a lot of work, a lot of blood, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of love, a lot of sacrifice. So that's your input, right? And we can do so much. We can work the hardest. We can sacrifice a hell of a lot, say our body, our minds, our sleep, our relationship, you name it, we've got this. But the output is really, really sweet, right? We get the promotion, we get the big bucks, we get the status, we get the beautiful business cards, we get the penthouses, we get the brands, if that's something we like to spend money on. We get the luxury lifestyle, we get the cars, whatever it is, that's your thing. You know, for me, it was operas and arts. Like, I'm a huge patron of the arts, so that's where my money went. Whatever it is, for some of us is bags. That's not my thing, but you know, it would be somebody's thing. So you have really, really a lot of input, but the output is also sweet, right? In other words, a lot of sacrifice, but a hell of a lot of reward. And that's quite an attractive equation for a smart woman because, you know, you get something you put in, but you get a lot out of it, right? So even if you're working for a very tough organization or a law firm or an investment fund or a hedge fund, like most of my ladies do, even if it's a quote unquote tough as hell environment, you still get a lot out of it. A lot. You get the rewards and the comps.
I think if you look into the psychology of success and the psychology of status and the neurochemistry of it for someone who is very dopamine driven, let's say unattractive, like, you know, that's going for that element, then when your associations and status and symbols of status, etc., is feeding your serotonin system of connection and stuff, and so you are operating up the hierarchy of performance. So you're playing this dopamine serotonin game in your neurochemistry, and then to let go of that, I would assume there's going to be a subsequent drop of both the declination of the serotonin levels and the declination of the dopamine levels, which would kind of feel kind of flat and depressing, which is not very attractive. Do you see any of that happening when people like say, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to abandon this and I'm going to be with, you know, try and find a guy and all this stuff and I'm going to let go of all this stuff and try to be it, but then all of a sudden the letdown has got to be pretty heavy.
Well, and this is where the fertility comes into the equation, because fertility is actually one of the toughest journey because the input does not equal the output. In other words, you can pick the best IVF clinic in the world. You can have the best diet. You can have the best partner. But if there is genetical issues and challenges, if for some reason, any reason, physiological or otherwise, it's not a success, then the result is going to be devastating. It's going to end in a pregnancy loss, or it's not going to take, or it's not going to work, or you don't have viable eggs. And that can be heartbreaking because you have done, quote unquote, all the good things. And usually in your past history and track record, anytime that you've done all the good things and all the hard work, something good came out of it, some kind of a reward, either monetary or status or otherwise. But now for the very first time, you're doing quote unquote all the good stuff and nothing good's coming out of it. And that's really hard for a woman.
Yeah. It's like a double collapse. Now I've given up all this to go down this road, and now that's been a failure. So now who am I?
Right. And here is something that I know is not very PC and not often talked about publicly, but being in a position where I literally spend like 2 to 4 hours a day speaking to those women, I feel like I'm in quite a unique position to say what I'm about to say, because I am in this woman's head. Like I listen to their minds. I hear their deepest, darkest secrets and thoughts day in and day out. So I'm in a very unique position to say what I'm about to say. The irony, or rather the sort of tragedy, is that the reason you have all that money and you have access to all these clinics is because you've worked during your fertile windows.
Right.
Your most fertile years you've dedicated to working. And now you're using all that money that you earned to do all those years of work to buy back fertility that was left behind a decade ago.
Yeah, and the irony of it is many of these high-performing females have said, "Well, I'm not going to lower my status, or I'm going to lower this to get into a relationship or a partnership or whatever," and or they've avoided that during that work cycle, and yet they're dedicating their fertility to a firm or a company or an organization run by a bunch of men who are essentially controlling what they're doing and not providing them the elements of like a partner and a father and a partner moving. So it's like you said, "Oh, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to do this," but you're dedicating it all to this other person and this other boss and this other, in a completely transactional relationship with zero, real intimacy involved. That's really going to fulfill you on the second half of life.
Yes.
Because the second that you don't make that performance you don't take that phone call at 4 a.m., you don't do that extra weekend of work, you fail and get the conviction, or you don't get the defense, or you don't close the deal, or you don't make that thing happen, guess what? There's another person that's a little bit more motivated, a little younger, a little sharper, a little faster, that is going to cut the legs out from you, and your firm or that organization will drop you like a sack of potatoes, and you're out on the street anyways. Is that not true? Am I incorrect?
It can be true.
It's a vicious, the high performance world is a vicious world.
It's a vicious world, and it's also one that is very attractive, though. So, I also want to say, for those women listening that find this conversation slightly triggering, I want to say, I've been that woman.
Yes,
right? So
yes. And we want it to be triggering. And just so folks, we want this to be triggering. If you're triggered from this conversation, that's a good sign that you probably need to talk to Charlene. I'm a bystander in this conversation, but I have seen it consistently, and I've talked to a lot of high performing ladies who work in my world, or I go, what I see particularly. And I'm sharing this as a man who has deep empathy for the females in my industry, but I would say I oftentimes go to these biohacking or these health events and these biological optimization events, and I will see these, ladies who are killing it in the industry. They look amazing. They're very smart. They've built themselves a great business. They're an influencer. They're at the point or whatever. They're usually traveling with another girl or two that's on the simple. And I see them coming up to the booth or challenge him we are, and I'm watching them run the qualification program on, they're literally hunting. You know what I mean? It's like this pack, they're hunting. And I feel for them because I know, like inside them, they'd probably be a great mom and they'd probably be a great partner and they do all this thing, but they're on the hunt because they're running out of time, and you can see it, and it's so obvious to me, and I'm going, yeah, I can see this, and it's not an attractive look from a guy's perspective. Like as a guy, you're looking at that and going, oh. That's a tough. I can see that's a tough position to be in, and it's not attractive.
And oftentimes, when the option continue to become less of an option. So, in other words, when you feel like you're coming at the end of the road, when it comes to the fertility journey, then guess what? You console yourself with more work, right? Because now you're officially not going to be a mother,
Right.
but you're going to make managing partner, or else, right? Or you're going to be made MD, or so then that's the sort of consolation prize that I see often happens. And then the only challenge with that is often it comes with a lot of psychological distraught, and it comes with resentment. And then that's typically when a woman starts to resent that career path. And that's also usually when they come knocking on my door in terms of, they feel a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of hurt. They feel isolated, they feel lonely. And that can be really tough to navigate. So that's why I feel so committed to this work. And this is why I'm so passionate about helping this woman.
Wow, this is really deeply moving and emotional elements of it, because I can feel like when you're talking about that, I can almost go into the field from my observations and what you're really dealing with here, right? Because here's the reality of things, and I share this with all due respect, is that I think it's been awesome that women have all of the opportunities, or many of the opportunities that men do in the professional world. And the world from a productivity and capability thing has doubled because of women entering the workforce inside of that. In other words, if you just took a standard deviation, half of the women out there are more competent than half of the men out there in any given field, particularly as we move away from a labor-intensive field, right? There's physical attributes, but certainly from a cognitive side, women are more than capable than many men. You go down that 50-50 split. And of course, if you look at the success of CEOs in this type of aspect, actually female CEOs tend to have a higher rate of success than men, and maybe are more adaptive to competing elements with the nature of the brain physiology of a female versus a man. They're able to context switch much easier than men are, just because of the cross correlations in the neural cortex. Yet, women possess one skill where they are 100% to 0% better than men, and that is only females can bear a child. And so society's gain with the capabilities as far as a performance or productivity or capability or accomplishment and all of the wonderful things that women have created in the world of out there. The reality is as men, we cannot do what a woman does, and that is bear a child. Can't do it. We can't do it. So it's like the competency variance is not a fair exchange. And I don't think that's been, I don't think being a mom has been, or like bearing a child, let's say, it has really, people have fully grasped it's the ultimate value in the human experience, in my opinion. Like there is no greater accomplishment in the world than to bring forth a new life. It's giving birth to new life, and it's 100% dependent on females.
Wade, when you're saying this, I really want to add something, and I don't think this is going to make me very popular amongst top university. Yet I work with top universities all the time, and I love my work there. So hopefully, they can see that I'm not pointing fingers, but rather just highlighting something that is related to my perception. So I'm just going to speak
Sure.
under, like this is
Yeah.
just a very personal opinion. When I was at arguably one of the best university in the world, it's just a top shelf university that trains and grooms the next generation of superpower brain. We were doing a lot of career planning and a lot of future forecasting, and we had a lot of mentoring around and the sort of stages and the applications. So the kind of lawyer we wanted to be, and when do we want to be sort of a trainee? So when do we apply? Then how do we make associate? How do we make partner? And the sort of timeline associated to that. So there was a bit of a rush to the application, a lot of competitiveness amongst, and which is healthy because it means you have a good grade.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down in my bedroom and sort of planning my years. And I was just doing this with my friends. And we were just I've always been friends with a lot of men in my life. That's one of the blessings in my life. I've always entertained very close friendships with men. And so we were just doing collage and how we were going to apply, when we were going to make associate, when we were going to make partners. And of course we were all more ambitious than the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at these moments and it never dawned on me that what I didn't plan for was a baby.
Wow.
It never occurred to me.
Wow.
When I was competing with those really, really smart men that I adore, and they're some of my friends,
Right.
by the way, and I'm sure they'll listen to this and self-identify. It didn't occur to me that I was a woman, and if I wanted a baby, I might want to add that to my future forecasting. It wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even an afterthought. It wasn't even on the cards. It wasn't even a fucking consideration, right? Like, I was in for the long haul, and the long haul was being the next greatest partner at the next biggest law firm. That's it.
It
didn't occur to me.
Right, but is that because of say a systemic oversight within the institutions because they've had these long trajectories, or is it a omission because of the PC element, or is it an element that the powers that are involved in this just aren't going to deal with and don't care? Like, why is that omission happening? Like, why are they not informing people on that level for females? Is it because they haven't had to, and the traditions and histories of that haven't addressed it? Has it not adapted to the times with the larger, now today's universities have more females than men entering into school?
Yeah.
That was not the case in the past. What is it?
So I think it comes from benevolent reasons, which is why I'm very mindful about the topic, because I don't think it comes from a bad place. I think it comes from good intentions. Let me explain what I mean by that. Because for many, many years, women were not allowed into these top universities,
Yes.
as we know from history. We're now in a very unique position in history where not only do we know that women are way capable, have same or higher IQs and capabilities and abilities and brilliance and talents. There is no question about that. So now the pool of talent is mixed, right? And so my belief is that in those universities, there is a genuine care for fostering talents and brilliance in women and wanting to encourage women to go for the partnership and not to go for finishing school and learn how to iron and make babies, right? So it comes from a place of wanting to say you are just as capable. Like if you want to be a vet, if you want to be a surgeon, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be an astronaut, you can, just like a man can. Like you are just as capable, as brilliant, as intelligent. So I think the origin story of that message is really kind because it's really pro women and it's really encouraging. And you know, I am an intelligent woman, so I do feel a lot of gratitude for the fact that I was able to go to this university, and I feel so privileged compared to the generation of women before me that were never allowed access to this university on the basis they were females, right? So I'm very, very aware of my privileges. But this privilege also comes with the misfortune of forgetting the biological reality of being a woman. And that is not talked about enough. And that is taboo. There is a big sort of veil around that topic that is frowned upon if you bring it up, because then people say, oh, but you're a very smart woman. You know, you have a whole life ahead of you. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what does that mean? Exactly.
I do not. If I graduate at 21 with a double degree and then 25 with a PhD, and then I start an organization at age 27 and I give them my best 10 years, 27 to 37, that is quite literally my fertile years, actually my late fertile years and the closing of my fertile windows, because my most fertile years are my early 20s to early 30s. Right, so I'm now at the top and the pinnacle of my career, and the message that I'm hearing is, sweetie, you've got time? Well, no, actually, I don't have time, and I wasn't aware of that. And now I'm about to blow my 40th birthday, and oh shit, I didn't realize that somewhere along the way, I didn't make a baby.
Yeah. And it's so innocent. It's so
right?
innocent, and so
yeah, I'm not blaming anyone.
Right,
and I was part of the system, and I was part of the processes, and I was part of those conversations. And I was the girl who wanted to compete with the boys, and I was the woman who wanted to have just as bold of a career as John did or Josh did, right? So I am part of the system. And I'm not blaming the system, but I'm saying we need to have more awareness pieces around the choices that we make. And we need to have ambassadors for high pursuit of intellectual careers. And I think it's wonderful that women do these things, but perhaps just a bit more awareness around what the choices are and what your options are, and when do those options no longer become viable.
Yeah.
Because smart women like to know that they have choices. And where I feel quite implicated in this story and where my heart lies is just spreading the message around the fact that you may not be aware that you have a window that's closing sooner than you think.
Thomas Sowell, the great American philosopher, he's in his 90s, and he's written a lot of, some would say, controversial books, in that he's like, look, I just study things and explain the facts. And one of the things that he says is, there are no solutions in life. There are trade-offs. And oftentimes, the proposed solution to a certain problem, usually implemented by very well-meaning and very smart individuals, has consequences that are worse than the prior situation before. Now, I'm not saying that's the situation, but what he said is it's not uncommon for institutions of high performance, high status, elite institutions to think through something and come up with the new solution. Like, okay, we've repressed women for all of these years, and we haven't opened up the university setting for her. We haven't opened up the career path for them in the executive world and in the legal world and all this, in the political world, etc., the finance world, all this. So now we're gonna do these massive multi-generational campaigns of, yes, you can do it, yes, you can compete with the boys, you can go to this education, you can do all this, which is all wonderful and well-meaning, but oh shoot, this baby thing. And you see this in virtually all of the industrialized nations of the world. massive population decline.
Well,
So
of course.
that's the trade-off. So the trade-off is I'm just reporting the facts of what that is. And so what you're sharing with us today is something that is probably far more pervasive than people would care to discuss, because as you said, this is not PC. You're not supposed to be talking about these things. How dare you? People might label me a misogynist or anything else, and that's not the case. My heart and my empathy is out there, because I know some great ladies that aren't going to have children, and they really want to, because they missed their window for the very reasons that you're outlining, or they burned themselves. And the other thing is too, is they can often, even if they think they're going to catch the window at the last part of their fertility aspect, they don't realize the cost of their high performance on the first part led to that burnout that made them less likely to be fertile as well in the age window. That's the other element, the other aspect of the trade-off that we haven't touched on. Because now they're missing their menstrual cycles. Now their sleep is disrupted.
Happened to me.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit, because we haven't gone there because. Yeah, so first off, we've covered a lot of the problems, but I want to also do respect to your work. But this has been so fascinating, and I'm glad that you've been staying on for so long. We might have to split it up into 2 parts in the record, but this is so great. Let's talk about this right here, because this is your work dealing with the burnout, because maybe I've come out of that, I'm burnt out, and I want to have children, or I want to have this other career, or what are these tenets that happened for you, and how are you using this in your current path to advise and to share and to help women? I'm assuming most of your clients are women. Maybe some of your clients are men.
I work with a lot of men too.
Okay, so both.
When it comes to fertility, so for different reasons.
Yeah.
So when I work with men, it's oftentimes more on the performance coaching side of the equation.
Sure.
And when I work with women,
cracking the whip, get these guys up to standard.
And the burnout prevention and recovery.
Right.
But the work that I do in the fertility world is specifically dedicated for females. Yes.
Yeah.
And the reality is 2 things I want to share. And as you said, perhaps this does deserve a part 2, so we don't rush into it. But the one thing I would say is actually quite simple, but perhaps worth remembering, right? So burnout by definition is being at a state where, from an autonomic nervous system standpoint, you're all mostly in fight or flight, right? Which is, it's not a scoop, it's not big news. All your listeners will know that, as opposed to being mostly in the rest and digest nervous system. But here's the interesting part of the equation that's not often talked about enough. Rest, digest, and reproduce. Right. So all these women that tell me all day long that they're quote unquote firefighting at work. Yeah. Yes, they are quite literally firefighting. So by definition, when you are physiologically firefighting, you are not physiologically ready to reproduce. And that's survival at its finest, right?
I think that's also true to men as well.
Oh, 100%.
I want to speak on men's behalf, because I know that for my own self is there is a significant shift in your physiology, your desire for sexual interactions, your all of those aspects, oftentimes because of the burnout factor of working all the time as a high performing guy too. So this is not just universal for female. The challenge is the time compression for females makes it much more urgent. I could burn myself out in my 40s and make a comeback in my 50s. Women don't necessarily have that option. That the clock is much shorter for the female biology.
Yes, and the damages are so real, right? So one of the most common diagnoses that I see amongst my clients is one that I had myself to navigate, which is hypothyroidism, which is very common. So one way I would love our listener to remember it. So if you are a high performer, your thyroid is most likely underperforming. And by the way, I used to find that super triggering that even one of my organs would be underperforming. I did not like that at all.
My organs operate perfectly.
When my endocrinologist said that, I was like, my thyroid is what? Underperforming? No, I don't think so. Well, yes, it is. I did not like that one bit.
Right. Yeah. I think most guys can relate to that response too, because we tend
I'm
to.
sure they can.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah. Fine. I'm good. Yeah. Everything's fine. Nobody wants to hear, because that's the other thing too. I think for men, because I want to add a little bit, I don't want to just rely exclusively on the ladies. I know I've had suboptimal elements come back with my naturopath and stuff that I work for. And yeah, whatever, deal with that. I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, don't, and I'm actually taking the time to go do that aspect, but I've seen suboptimal elements in certain parts of my life and be like, whatever. Yeah, I don't believe that. And that's it. I'm going to dismiss that. They probably got something wrong. You know what? It was a busy week. We'll retest in a couple of months. I'll be totally fine.
Well, and it's important to know as well that, burnout is not compatible to fertility planning. So if you are actively trying to conceive while being really burnt out, you are actually physiologically decreasing your chances. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Because chronic stress is not conducive to heighten fertility. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's going to make it a lot harder and a lot longer and a lot more expensive if you're using clinics as well. So perhaps just to sort of recap, but also and on a positive spin, I am the greatest ambassador when it comes to female empowerment, and I've never believed in the advice of telling high-performing women who are super capable and super brilliant to quit their career and just lock themselves at home. That is not at all my message. I don't believe in that, and I don't do that. So the message is not quit your career and just quit your ambition. No, it's actually understand that there is a sustainable way of doing it and there is an unsustainable way of doing it. And you can lead without the anxiety. You can work and perform at the highest level while remaining calm and composed along the way and using your health as a KPI. So the way I like to work with women.
Oh, I love that one.
Right.
Using your health as a KPI.
And that's my most important KPI, because for those women, they're very KPI based. They want to thrive, they want to perform. And so I'm never going to go and meet a Caroline in this world who is about to be made MD or managing partner and say, hey, Caroline, take a chill pill, like maybe you should take a break. Maybe you should go to India. Why don't you go to an ashram? Like that Caroline is going to hate me and sack me. And frankly, she's not going to listen. And why would she? Right?
Yeah.
So that's not my approach. I really believe in the success model that I've built now. And the reason I say that is because, yes, I am very successful in business, but also in life. And that's my true measure of sustainable success. And I can say that confidently because I know what it was like when I wasn't, right? So what I would like perhaps as a sort of ending note to use a visual, because I think that visuals really stick with our subconscious, is to think of your life and to think of your career as an ambitious female leader, as a pyramid. And if you're anything like me or anything like I was, I have a feeling that your pyramid might be a little bit inverse. So granted, I work in construction, so I am quite obsessed with foundations, but just stay with me for a second. So if you think of an inverse pyramid where you have very little well-being and a hell of a lot of success at the top. So you'll have a very, very, very fragile foundation, but you'll have a lot of success, a lot of power, a lot of status, a lot of comp, right? So that seems very attractive and it seems like you can stretch it out. But the reality is one day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, maybe not in 10 years, but one day eventually, I promise you it's going to collapse. Right. I know that because my pyramids collapsed and because I literally see pyramids collapse every day. That's what I do. And then we pick up the pieces and we're trying to rebuild. So if you're listening to this, it's not about quit your job. It's about really reshaping your pyramid and becoming the architect of your career, your life, and your choices. And understand that if your foundation is well-being and self-care and girls listening, ladies listening, that doesn't mean a bubble bath and that doesn't mean taking it easy, right? It just means genuinely checking your thyroid function, your metabolic health, your HRV, your chronic stress, your inflammation levels, like actually investing in your health from the ground up. Your hormones, your estrogen, your ovulation. Are you tracking? Are you menstruating regularly? All and everything. I want you to have a full health MOT and to make your energy, your libido, your health the greatest KPI of your career achievement. And that's your foundation. Once you've got that, you can build just about any success on top of it. You can attract the most handsome, powerful, exciting man in the world because you will be luminous and you'll have so much energy and you'll be so desirable. You can also continue to get promoted because people will gravitate towards you because you'll be able to lead with a sense of a great aura and a sort of great energy about you, and people can sense energy, and it's not esoteric, it's not woo-woo, it's just biology, right? You'll be able to lead well and role model success for the future generation. I look after my team and I make sure that they're well above all. Yes, I want them to work hard and I need them to perform and I need them to deliver, but I also take great pleasure in knowing that they're healthy and that I, as the leader, maintain the same shape of pyramid for my team and all the folks around me. And that is when you know that you get to the pinnacle of success. So pinnacle of success actually starts by building a very solid foundation. And if family planning, and it doesn't have to be, for many of us, family planning is not part of the pyramid, and that's absolutely fine. But if that's your desire and family planning is somewhere in that pyramid, then you can, because you're healthy, right? I, have a super blissful and super healthy pregnancy. And I haven't stopped working, quote unquote. I haven't done the traditional format of, I'm just feeling more delicate or more fragile or any of that. I've actually just quite literally done a world tour. I've been on stages with stilettos and heels, 8 months pregnant, and been the keynote speaker and made people laugh and made people cry and led my team and continue to do so. And I believe that I can, and I believe that I will, because my health is so good, right? So I'm not saying you can always have it all, but you can certainly build it in a way that is more sustainable if you believe that you can be the leader that you can be and also the mother that you want to become, and don't believe that one has to come at the cost of the other, because actually that's a false narrative.
Well, I can see your background as a litigator coming to Fairfront as you put forth your final argument for overcoming
that was my
burnout.
Closing remark.
Yes, the number one KPI is health is a very compelling argument and very defensible condition. So I think the jury would pass the verdict onto your side of the bar or the aisle. As we come to, we've been talking for so long, I want to just continue. I find this conversation so invigorating and so honest and deeply transformative. And I'm certain that there is going to be some ladies out there in particular that are going to hear this and recognize the value in truth in your words and the argument that you've put forth. And they are, unfortunately, under the gun. They are running out of time, right? That's a favorite. I'm a bit of a musical aficionado, and one of my favorite songs is by Pink Floyd, Time. And it's a beautiful, if you just, whether someone's into Pink Floyd or not, if they just actually read the lyrics within that song, and it's beautiful. I used to listen to it as a young man and would recognize the truth and validity inside that, largely because my sister had died early. She died at an early age, and I became acutely aware of the impermanence of life and the impermanence of health, that these weren't guarantees in life and that they could pass by. And so the tragedy also had a gift within it, because it became something that allowed me to take more chances in life than some people, to overcome extraordinary failures, because it was better to try and to fail than to not have tried or have the opportunity to try at all. And also the urgency that drove me to make decisions that ended up being fruitful despite my failings and and the parts that I made mistakes on. It turned out really well. But here we are with ladies who are in that world. I know I'm kind of leaning towards the females, but I think because I have so many friends, female, like really killer females in the space. My wife happens to be one of those ladies. She's taking her PhD. She's raising her 16 months old. She just finished, her first children's book in neurofeedback. She's a 5-time world champion in jiu-jitsu. She is doing it and all. And she's attracted an amazing partner like me. Just to throw that out there.
Of course she did.
Right?
Because she built her foundation right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for example, I can say, like, she came into my life as a very high performer, but because she had that physical vitality that was there, even though that she was older to enter into a relationship through, that physical vitality does confirm your argument in that, okay, you know what, she might be older than is optimal for having children, but I can see that she's still capable of doing it, and she's a very capable woman as well. Wow. I bet that we could have super capable children with her. And so I saw those things that we talked about as a liability, as a high performing guy, as myself. I was like, now I have someone who understands my standards, how I operate. So I'm going to share the inside ball from a male standpoint, high performance athlete, Inc. 5000 entrepreneur, all of those things that have been blessed with in my own life. I wanted a partner that could meet me on those standards, so that when we had children, I wasn't fighting for the standards for my children, that someone could understand, and we could navigate the difficulties within all that high performance environment, so that we could pass that on to the next generation. So even though she was older than some of the other suitors that were out there that were maybe younger, and what people would say would be more attractive, more this, all those kind of things that, an older woman would be concerned about. She had a set of skills and abilities and development that became very intellectually attractive, and also value-oriented attractive, because I realized that the principles of high performance and athleticism and education were very attractive to me, because I knew that she would instantly transfer those values into our future children. And I'm seeing that unfold now. We're 16 months in, and I'm in complete awe with my wife and what she's capable of doing. And certainly in the first couple of years, there is a disproportionate amount of dependency on the mom over the dad. I suspect that will change at some point, or I'm certainly hoping for it. I kind of like to, but you don't know how all these things work out. So I can concur with your argument and say that yes, you can be actually even more attractive to a partner if you get this health base put out. So what are the initial steps that a person needs to do if they're in that identifying as that high performing female that's heading into burnout, looking at fertility, wanting to find a partner, having kids, and doesn't know how they're going to pull it off and has a short window of time? How do you go about helping them? What do they need to do? How do they need to reach you? All of that stuff. I want an unabashed pitch for them to come over and join your movement here to say, look, you can have it all. And but if you want it all, you got to act now. You got to take action now. So there's the call to action. So the floor is yours.
What I would say is a lot of these women, and I include myself, so I say this with a lot of love, tend to be quite stubborn. And stubborn makes for great leaders in an organization, in a corporation. But being quite stubborn or headstrong, right? That's the positive reframe to being stubborn. Means that oftentimes you think that you can sort it all out on your own, that you've got this, right? Because you're so independent and you're so smart. And I get that because I believed that for many years. And actually that belief held me back in my healing and in my psychological well-being. So what I would say to the woman listening right now is, I want you to just close your eyes and think about who you serve. You know, whether you're an attorney, whether you're an MD, whether you any industry. I know that you have a unique set of skills and talent, and I want you to think about what your client's life would look like and feel like if you were not in it. Totally different, right? So can you see for me that you have this unique set of skills that only you know how to serve that client, and only you know how to help them, and they're bright and they're smart, but they need you. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Good. So take a nice deep breath for me and just think about the fact that you are so many things to so many people. And wouldn't it therefore follow that it could be the same applied to you if you had that one person in your life that could see things that you can't see right now and could actually be your advocate and could help you detangle beliefs that have held you back in the past and could be fiercely fighting your corner in the way that you fiercely fight everyone else's corner. And that person cannot, by definition, be you. This is the reason why you're so valued by your clients, is because you need to be that person for other people. So why don't you let someone be that person for you? Now I want you to take a nice deep breath and know that you don't have to resolve this on your own. And this is not one more problem for you to solve. It's just an awareness piece for you to gain. And truthfully, it's a lot harder and a lot longer and a lot more expensive to do this on your own. So don't. There are people out there that are dedicated to serving you and helping you. I'm one of them. There are many out there, and we're here for you.
Where can they reach you? How do they find out more about you? How do they acquire your services, follow you, track you, get all the social media, all that
Track
sort of stuff?
me down.
Track you down, hunt you down, and find you and corner you to help them with this urgent call that they have.
Well, I have a lot of free resources that this women and men can access. So I have a show, the Charlene Gisele show, which is a podcast that I release every week, where I talk about all things burnout. I talk a lot about fertility. So if you go into my podcast page and you scroll all the way down to the F letter, you'll see all the amazing experts that I've had on the topic. And you'll see a lot of resources as well. I have a fertility home guide that you can download for free to help you optimize your house, to optimize your fertility, to optimize your body and your metabolic health if you're currently actively trying to conceive. And if you feel that you need more bespoke guidance, then please feel free to reach out. And I would like to invite you to say Wade as a subject, so I know that you've listened to this, and I will absolutely prioritize that message that I get from you. So
This has been one of my favorite conversations of the year. Thank you so much, Charlene, for just really deep diving and being so vulnerable and going into an area that from an experiential, there's many practitioners out there, but like your experience is very unique and you've operated at the highest levels in so many different components, from education to your career, and then now you're in this beautiful relationship and you're both ready to become a mom yourself. It's a magical story, and the fact that you're willing to share your experience and pass that story and make that other people's story is really, really powerful. So I want to thank you for that and joining us on the show. And for everyone listening, I hope you will jump on, find Charlene, follow her, and take her services if it's right for you. If you think it's late, it's later than you think. So act now, take the action, and tell us the stories of success, because that's what we're here for. We're here to make a happy, healthy population living stronger, longer, and most importantly, better lives. And when it comes to female fertility for high-performing women, there is no topic that I'm more passionate about. And the world needs those type of moms in the world to give birth to the next generation. And it's the most optimistic thing that you can do for the future. Don't buy into all the negative elements that are out there, because we are all the successful descendants of 10,000 plus generations before that went through every single end of the world scenario ever imagined: wars, famines, disease, everything that you can imagine, disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, snows, like every possible calamity in the world has happened to our ancestors. And the fact that you're here means that there is an unbroken line of successful reproduction regardless of the situation, and your problems can be solved, especially as a high performer. Charlene's your girl. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Wade T. Lightheart. This is the Awesome Health Podcast from Bioptimizers. Thank you for joining the show. We look forward to share this, get your comments, and of course, I want to hear about all you high-performing ladies having babies. Take care.
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com, and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.